average 401k balance by age. Hey, are you behind?
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Brian, I am so excited about this show because I think this has become one of our perennial favorites. We love doing these by age segments. We love talking about 401ks, and we love loading you guys up with the information to know, am I ahead of the curve, behind of the curve, and what do I need to know as it relates to my employer-sponsored retirement plan?
First thing, though, because I feel this year's a little different, Bo, and the fact that there's a lot of noise in the background questioning if 401ks are even viable.
Yeah, there's a lot of big names out there, and there's one I want to share to you. You may be out there hearing something like this.
The 401k is so bad, if it didn't exist, we wouldn't invent it.
Many people, they'll say to me, I say, how you doing? They go, well, I built up $1 million in my 401k. And I go, you don't have $1 million in your 401k. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, first of all, half of that's the government's.
Right. Second, you take 50, any money of it.
Yeah, 50% tax back to this person. So you have half of it. The person
Tony
looks
Robbins.
depressed. I said, better to know the truth because I can show you how to get free. But you have to know the truth. The truth will set you free, and better know it so we can do something about it. He goes, wait, he goes, but wait, I got tax. I see you got tax deferral, but you could have done that in a different way, and all that money, that million, would have been all of yours.
So, Bo, here's something I think is interesting. Tony Robbins, motivational type guy.
Yep.
He's done
Very well known.
A lot of people. He tries to get the best out of everyone. Him wading into 401ks is a little shocking to me. Now, first, in his defense, I think he lives in California.
Sure, yep.
And Tony Robbins makes a lot of money motivating people.
High-income individual.
So I guess if you take the 37% top federal marginal rate plus the 13% that the state of California gets you, Tony Robbins is being truthful that 50% of the money that comes out of his 401k would go to the government.
Yeah, but in that same vein, what he's talking about is if he is in that 50% tax bracket, 50% of the money he put into his 401k was funded by the government. There's a huge tax savings for someone in a situation.
But let's bring it back to the reality of people watching this, because we talk about all the time is that one of your goals with a 401k is while you're in your peak earning years, it ties into what you said, is that you're taking your biggest tax deductions off of your marginal rate, but then you're hopeful because you have the 3 bucket strategy that you can pull your money out of your retirement accounts. You won't have the earned income at much lower increments. And I know you can pull like close to $100,000 a year because it's around $84,000 after deductions. And it's at 12%. So the reality is most people will get to keep 88% of the money they distribute out of their 401k in retirement. I think Tony was trying to motivate people. I don't know if it's some insurance product or something he's aligned himself with. But for the good news for most of us, your 401k is not going to get beat up by 50% in the federal government.
Here's what I think is interesting. I think that Tony is a wealthy individual. I think he interacts with a lot of wealthy individuals. So when you hear him say something like that, you may say, okay, well, this isn't what wealthy people do. This isn't the type of tool that wealthy individuals use. And we know that that's just not the case. You know, there's a big study done by Ramsey Solutions, and they found that 80% of millionaires interviewed, they interviewed something like 10,000 millionaires, 80% of them invested in their company's 401k. So they weren't the wealthy folks who said, hey, no, I'm not going to use that vehicle. They actually utilized and capitalized on their 401k at work.
Well, I'll take it a step further because we do an annual survey of our clients, and we now work with clients in 45 states. And when we asked, how did you make your money? Were you like a virtuoso? Were you somebody that inherited it? Were you an entrepreneur, a senior executive? No. The lion's share, 68% of our clients came from savers slash investors. And I bet it correlates back to that Ramsey Solution data point that around 80% are also highly involved in their employer retirement plans.
And so you may be saying, okay, well, why are people taking advantage of this? Why do people use their 401ks? Well, one of the reasons that people often use a 401k or use an employer-sponsored plan is one of our favorite things in the whole world. It's because of free money. A lot of these plans will have your employer say, if you participate, I'm willing to participate with you. I will put money in there. So it should be a no-brainer. Everybody should do it, and we should just see 100% adoption rate.
Well, this brings up a good point, is that any type of vehicle, retirement savings vehicle, that the government is putting a cap on how much you can put in, but also incentivizing your employer to set this up that they let it be a deductible expense to them if they turbocharge your savings by making contributions on your behalf. Sit up in your chair, because the government doesn't. There's a reason that they incentivize this behavior. A lot of the content creators we're showing reactions to TikTok and so forth are talking about some conspiracy that the government and the employers involved. It's just the opposite. They're actually putting a carrot out there to incentivize you to save and build your best selves forward for the financial future.
But this is what I think is so heartbreaking. When you actually look at the numbers, right? Only 34% of employees did not get the full match in their retirement plan. This is data from Vanguard. So that means that like roughly 1 in 3 folks are walking away from free money. They say, you know what? I don't want it. I'm not going to take advantage of it. Don't give it to me. And so the question that you have to ask is why? Why might someone walk away from free money inside of their 401k retirement plan?
Well, that would never happen. If we were all in the room with everyone watching this video, set up the table, bags of money, everybody's picking it up, but yet in this virtual digital world we live in, there are content creators that are even, I'll just say it, poo-pooing the idea of free money.
What's up, guys? I'm going to show you why even a 401k match does not serve you. Check this out. And this is me speaking facts. You can look this up for yourself. You will see what I'm about to tell you is 100% facts. Over the last 20 years, the inflation rate in the United States is 3.1%. Now, not only do I want to prove this with facts, I want to prove it with math. So grab a calculator, put in 1 representing $1. So now simply take that 1 and multiply it by 0.969. That represents inflation every year. Do that 20 times. After 20 times, you'll be left with 0.53. That means that your $1 is basically worth about 53 cents 20 years from now. And if your company matched that dollar, that means that you have $1.06 in 20 years. There's definitely better ways to make 6 cents on each dollar. And not to mention, have your profits now, not in 20 years. Guys, the 401k was meant to keep you average. If you want more, follow me for more tips.
There's a lot of things going on there. First of all, I love that he did a combo. He did both a math and an inflation crime at the same time.
He got them sort of wrapped in there together.
Yeah, let's kind of dissect and take this thing apart. He did a little redirection there, is that he said, okay, inflation's 3.1% a year, and then he had you extrapolate that out for the next 20 years and how it's losing purchasing power. But you see, he left out, there was a big thing he left out that you're doing with the money. Because when your money goes in the 401k, does it just sit there and start essentially dissolving because of inflation? No, we talk about it. Anybody who's watching the Money Guy show, you know, we tell you put that money to work in low cost index funds. And this is where I think, let's go ahead and put the math to it. He said, pull out your calculator. Good news. We did bring our calculators just like he suggested. Now, look, let me go ahead and tell you where one of the crimes, the math crimes occurred, is he said $1 invested in your plan is only going to generate $1.06. The reality is a lot of plans are dollar for dollar contributions. So if you put $1 in, your employer puts $1 in, that's $2 that got invested. And here's what we know. That dollar that he said turned into 53 cents because he just has it dissolving because of inflation. If you actually invested it with a very reasonable 8% rate of return over the same 20-year period, it would turn that dollar into $4.93. But good news, we didn't invest just $1 because we got that free employer match. We actually invested $2, so it's worth right under $10.
That's exactly
so
right.
Here's what's crazy. He says that the dollar turned into 53 cents. In reality, it turned into almost $10 with the employer match. That's a 2,000% difference from what he, supposedly was telling us were the facts Be careful where you get your information.
Now, what I think is so interesting is he was actually talking about a relatively short time period, 20 years. If you've been listening to this show for any amount of time, you know that we love this idea of 88 times over. $1 invested for a 20-year-old can turn into $88 by the time that they get to retirement, by the time they get to age 65. It's why we have the koozies. It's why we have the wealth multiplier. If you go to moneyguide.com/resources, you can see the illustration. But if you're someone fortunate enough to work with an employer that does a dollar for dollar match, it is actually better than 88 times over for you. $1 for you, if your employer will also put $1 in at age 20, can turn into almost $177 by the time that you get to 65. So I think that this mathematic that this guy was trying to convince us of is total hogwash. This is what you should be getting excited about that can be happening inside of your 401k.
So partner up that most valuable resource. Remember, we talk about the 3 components of wealth creation is discipline. That's you deferring a portion of your salary towards your employer's retirement plan. The 401k, that's the money that's getting invested, giving it enough time with the free match. And this thing, you are going to turn that $1 not into $88. You're going to turn it into $176. You're seeing the power of compounding growth plus free money. Booyah. That's awesomeness for the long term.
All right, Brian. So let's talk about a little bit. So let's take a step back. Sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and we get super excited. Let's talk about some of the basics of a 401k. Because really what a 401k allows you to do is it allows you to defer some portion of your income into the future. It allows you to invest those dollars to work for you. And as it stands right now in 2022, the salary deferral limit for 401k contributions is $20,500. That means if you're under 50, you can opt to defer $20,500 of your income into a 401k for the future. If you're someone who's over 50, you get to do a catch-up contribution.
Or
you can
50 and over.
Or
That's
50
because
and
I'm
over.
getting
That's
close, so I get that
you
distinction.
Get it
I'm trying to get it right.
50, it actually turns into $27,000. But there's more. A lot of people think that that's where the limits exist. If you are someone who's participating in a plan where your employer puts money in, or perhaps you can do after-tax contributions. In a given year, in 2022 specifically, for those under 50, you can actually have $61,000 of 401k contributions across the different contribution types that we'll talk about go into your plan. For someone who is 50 and over, that total contribution limit is $67,500 a year.
And you can imagine, if you're doing this per year and you start stacking this over 5 years, 10 years, your money goes a long way, especially when you start compounding the growth on this. This is why the majority of millionaires are created in those employer plans, because you got the free money, the compounding growth. It really is an incredible, incredible thing for the future.
All right, so we've talked about money that you can put into the plan. Now let's talk about the exciting part, the free money. There are a few different types of contributions that can go into your plan. We'll kind of walk through each one of them. The first one, Brian, is matching.
Yeah. Matching comes in different forms. First, let's talk about, this is where you have to put, it's going to be 50 cents on the dollar. It's going to be dollar for dollar up to a percentage of your income or a certain dollar amount. Whatever that number is, that's the free money. So if it's 50 cents on the dollar on the first 6%, you want to do 6%. So you get 3% free from your employer for a total of 9%. Yep. If it's dollar for dollar up to 6%, you do 6% still, but now you're getting 12% in total because you are putting in 6 and your employer. Really powerful stuff. Now, look, we'll talk about in a minute some ways that this can be put in where you'll know how much of this you get to keep instantly or how much has a vesting schedule. But matching is the first thing to understand.
So there's matching contributions where you have to have some skin in the game. But then there are another type of contributions called non-elective. Whether you participate or not, the employer puts money in on your behalf. Most often, we see this with what are called safe harbor plans. It's a special type of plan that allows your employer to have very simplified logistics and administration, which means even if you don't put any money in, the employer puts money in for you. So obviously, if you're in a plan that has non-elective contributions, that's gravy. That's free money that you can't screw up even if you wanted to.
Yeah, and you see these a lot of times when I've seen non-elective safe harbor plans, you'll see no matter what your behavior is, your employers go put in 3%.
Yep.
And that's pretty powerful.
And then the third type of contribution from the employer that can go in is known as profit sharing. This is where the employer contributes a portion of profits to your 401k. Oftentimes, this is discretionary year over year, and these contributions can fluctuate based on a number of things. Perhaps it's your job role, perhaps it's your income, perhaps it is the profitability of the company, but these are additional employer dollars that can flow into the plan on your behalf.
And by the way, this is not an either or. It's not uncommon that you'll find out your employers go use some combination of these three. Mm-hmm. You might get both matching as well as profit sharing, or non-elective plus profit sharing. So pay attention, read your plan documents, see what your employer discloses to you. Make sure you just know what's free, what are the opportunities so you don't miss out.
But not all money that goes into the plan is your money immediately. A lot of times there are what we call golden handcuffs on employer contributions. So we thought we'd kind of walk through some of the different types of contributions and some of the limitations you might have on being able to access those or being able to consider them yours. And those are called vesting schedules. So with the non-elective contribution we talked about, the safe harbor contribution, you are always 100% vested in that. So if you start participating if you start working a new job, start participating, and your employer puts a safe harbor contribution into your account, that money is immediately yours starting right now today. If you change jobs, change employers, you get to take that money with you. The second type of vesting is known as a cliff vesting. This is where contributions vest at 100% after some period of time, most often 3 years. So if you've been at a company and you get a profit sharing contribution in year one, you have to actually work there for 3 or whatever the number of years before you are 100% vested. If you were to leave the employer in that time period, you have to forfeit those dollars back to the employer. And then the third type of vesting schedule is a graded schedule. This is often done over 6 years, where it's 0 after 1 and then 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Again, this is an incentive that employers put in and say, hey, you know what? We want our employees to participate in the profit of this company, but we also want to encourage long-term tenure. We want our folks to be here for a long time. So we're going to put a vesting schedule on these contributions to incentivize them staying here working at this company.
Now, it's important to note, all the money you put in, the salary deferral, the portion that is from your salary is always 100% vested. That is your money no matter what you do on changing jobs or so forth. Now, these things, the employer vesting, meaning only the employer money, there's a very good chance it still, once again, might be a combination of these.
Sure.
It's not uncommon that you'll see your non-elective or your matching contribution will be safe harbor, meaning they're immediately vested,
Yep.
but maybe the profit sharing is on a graded. So pay attention to the different components that your employer is putting in, and then figuring out how long you have to wait before it's truly fully yours.
Okay, Brian, so let me ask you a question. I'm a listener out there and I'm getting super excited and I'm thinking, man, okay, I love the idea of the 401k. I love all this stuff, all this contribution you're talking about. But man, should I really be doing this right now? The market is near all-time highs. There's global conflict going on. I can't turn on the TV without hearing about inflation. Should I really even be investing right now, or should maybe I wait until things seem a little safer, happier, more optimistic?
So here's another thing that I like about 401ks and all employer plans. These things are automatic volatility, kind of reduction behaviors, because think about the way these work. Every month you get paid. Your employer is going to take a portion of your pay, plus they're going to put contributions in as well, and you're going to buy in. That is dollar cost averaging. When you're buying on a monthly basis, no matter whether the market's going up or down, that allows you to take advantage of any volatility that's coming your way. Because from a financial mutants standpoint, if you buy next month when the market's down 20%, you got it at a discount.
It's a deal. You bought on
and it
sale.
also, you're even going to find you're going to be like, why am I so excited that I know my money goes in on the third day of the month? I know the market was down today. You kind of have this weird contrarian mindset that you get excited about buying. But we want to extrapolate this out because a lot of people will go look at history and they'll say, man, there's some scary times out there. What if we were in the lost decade or the lost 2 decades? Because they have existed. Sure. I'm telling you, if you will drive through it, always be buying, you will be rewarded in the long term. And we have the data and receipts to support that.
So let's talk about a great example looking at one of the worst downturns in history and show you the power of dollar cost averaging. So if you think about the Great Depression, the largest downturn in the economy we've seen in this country, the Dow closed at $381 on September 3rd of 1929, and then it closed at $383 on November 23rd of 1954. A $2 increase in a 25-year period.
We'll take a step back. I want everybody who's listening out there in the podcast world too to notice we're showing a visual of the Dow Jones from 1900 all the way to 2020. And if you look at this thing, you're like, oh, there's that mountain that people are walking up. Yes, there's volatility in the short term, but you're walking higher and higher, except for they see that period in the 1930s to 50s and like, ooh,
that doesn't look good.
That looked like, man, that thing fell off a cliff. It kind of bounced around before it started making that traction walk up the mountain again. That would have been a horrible time to be an investor, or was it?
So let's look at what would have happened. Let's say that a hypothetical $10,000, and by the way, we get hammered on this. We use $10,000. You could do this if this was $1,000, $100. The percentage stays the same. But for example, if you had $10,000 and you invested it each year beginning on September 1st, the total hypothetical investment over that time period until 1954 would have been $260,000. So $10,000 a year during the Great Depression, $260,000. And let's assume that you just let the money sit and you have your dividends that your investments are paying be reinvested. So you're just buying back in, buying back in, buying back in. At the end of that 25-year period, your $260,000 investment compounded to $1.5 million. That's an 11.7% per year total return during the Great Depression. Now, people say to us all the time, oh, well, what if you didn't have a job or nobody could save that much? Then it's not about the period. We're not talking about the Great Depression. We're talking about if you can stay consistent, even through volatile times, it is a high likelihood you'll be rewarded as an investor on the other end, but you have to have the discipline to do it.
Yeah, because you were buying all those shares at reduced prices because you had the volatility, market was down. That's why anybody who thinks that, you know, if you're in your 20s, 30s, even 40s right now, and you're worried about what's going on with the geopolitical world, the inflation, and those type of things, I want you to think long and hard about this exercise and say, I'm a long-term investor. And I know in the long term, this is a wealth creation machine. Take advantage of it. Practice the good behavior of discipline and buying automatically, paying yourself first. You will be rewarded in the long term.
Okay, Brian, I want to talk a little bit now about specific ages. I want to talk about, at the very beginning, I want to talk about our 20-year-olds, those folks that are at the beginning of their career and they have everything out ahead of them. They have all the opportunity in the world. And yet, a lot of them are not making decisions right now that we would suggest they should be making.
Now, wait a minute. You left something out there, Bo. 20-somethings are billionaires.
They are billionaires.
They are right. Time billionaires. I tell you, the most powerful resource in wealth creation is how long you have for your money to grow and compound on your behalf. And 20-somethings have the biggest opportunity, but yet there's something in the background that's whispering to them, YOLO. Hey, you only live once. You could die tomorrow. Tomorrow's not promised, but you better enjoy right now. We have proof that this is everywhere.
Make sure you max out your 401k. Your future self will thank you.
Love it.
Okay, sounds good. My 401k balance is $200,000. Too bad I just can't use it. Don't worry, your future self will thank you. My 401k balance just hit 500,000. Too bad I still can't use it. Don't worry, your future self will thank you. My 401k just hit 1 million. Too bad I still can't use it. Don't worry, your future self will thank you. 2 million! My 401k finally hit 2 million! Ow, my back!
For those listening to the podcast, he had at 65. So I think he thinks at 65 you just completely fall apart.
Yeah, he was going at every age. You know, at 20, save your future self. At 30, save your future self will thank you. At 40. And I do worry that a lot of young folks feel this way. Oh, why do I care about this? Why do I care about having millions of dollars when I'm 65? I'm not going to live much longer after that. That's forever in the future. Why would I care about what my future self thinks?
One of the big reasons we create this content is I'm hopeful that us encouraging you to save, even giving you a threshold of how much you should save, doesn't make you feel like you're entrapped by this, where you're regretting that you're not enjoying. I'm hoping that it actually liberates you, because if you pay yourself first, once you reach those goals, the next dollar that comes into your possession, you can use it without regret. You've maximized the potential of that dollar, as well as then you can YOLO it up all you want and go build memories, create things, because you paid yourself first and did it right. And for all the YOLO crowd, this is something I think is so interesting. I said, Daniel, when we were looking at this video, I said, so he is making it seem like as you get older, it all falls apart. Don't do this because you just don't know what's going to happen in the future. And the reality is, most of you watching this video will live to a ripe old age. And we have the proof. I mean, look at the U.S. life expectancy from 1860 all the way through 2020. You can see,
older and older.
Now look, 1860, 40 years old. I would already be like, whoo, right. Man,
Doing good now.
You were good. I mean, but I can't believe it. You've already made it 10 years beyond when you were supposed to. No, that's not the way life works now. You can see the line is right there under 80 years of age. You will likely live to a ripe old age. Start acting accordingly.
Yeah, so often people say, well, tomorrow's not guaranteed. I don't know if tomorrow will be. Your risk is not that tomorrow won't come. The risk is tomorrow will come and you're unprepared. Even in that video that the guy showed, he was like, 65, my 401k finally hit 2 million. Imagine if he would have turned 65, his back went out, and he didn't have the $2 million. That's actually a much worse place to be in.
The quote in there was, your future self will thank you. Here's what you don't want. Your future self to hate the younger self because they see what a missed opportunity. Because, by the way, I have so many people. I don't have anybody like myself who started saving at a young age, who gets to my age, and I realize I'm not going to die with pennies. There's a good chance I'm going to have legacy planning and other things that a lot of the people we work with are going through the same things. I have zero regret about the things I didn't get to do in my 20s and 30s versus I know lots of people my age that have the midlife crises and other things because they just didn't do what they should have done from a behavioral standpoint. Don't be the person, not the quote, your future self will thank you. Don't be your future self will hate you for squandering that valuable resource of time. Get to work.
All right, so let's give you guys some spot checks. Let's talk about where our folks in their 20s are. So if you look at the average person in this country in their 20s, and all this data is from Fidelity and Vanguard, the average 401k balance for someone in their 20s is just under $20,000, $19,995. If you look at the average contribution rate, now this does not include employer contributions, this is just employee contribution rates, is about 7.4% for our 20-year-olds. So when I hear that, immediately I remember being in my 20s. I remember being broke. I remember things being tight. At least you're starting somewhere. But remember, if your goal is to have financial independence and to have it as early as possible so that you can have freedom and flexibility control as soon as possible, we think you should aspire to save 20 to 25% of your gross income. So if you're at 7.4, that's great. You should still try to see if you can get closer to 20 and 25%. if you want to know where your total net worth should be, where your portfolio should be, you should aim by the end of your 20s, by the end of the decade, to have about 1.2 times your annual income saved by the time you get to age 30.
Yeah, so you can see most people are hitting about a third, and this is going to be a consistent trend. It's not just the 20-somethings.
Yep.
People are only saving about a third of what we recommend. Here's what I would like to flip the script and say, okay, and I know in 20s this is aspirational because you're starting your career, you're not making as much as you will make. You're just trying to build the behavior of good, building strong savings habits and investing, letting your money work for you. But what if you could do the 25%? What is that going to do for your future self?
Yeah, it gets really, really exciting. So let's say that conservatively you can earn 6% rate of return in your portfolio. We think that's really conservative. And your goal when you retire is to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. And we're going to assume that your portfolio can sustain a 4% withdrawal rate. All these are pretty broad assumptions, but pretty conservative. If you're a 20-year-old and you start saving 25% at 20, by the time you get to 49, assuming a relatively nominal wage growth rate of 1.5%, by the time you get to 49, you'll have a portfolio large enough to sustain a 4% withdrawal rate equal to 80% of your pre-retirement income.
Now, you used to hear a lot about FIRE, financial independence, retire early. I think when I see somebody who started at 20 who has reached this point by 49, it's the financial independence.
That's right.
Not necessarily retire, but I'm telling you now, instead of working because you're required to, you're working because you enjoy it. You own your time. Think about right now while you're young, you're trading your time for money, wages. In the future, if you do this right, you will trade your money, and it'll be money that came from compounding growth for more time. That is the exact opposite of what we saw in that video where he was like, your future self will thank you. And then, oh, I'm hurting so bad because I'm old. No, this is going to give you more freedom, more flexibility to live life like you want to sooner. The sooner you start being disciplined and putting your money to work.
So let's play out the rest of the decade. If you let's say that you don't get to start at 20 because you go to college, you start saving at 25. At 25, if you start saving 25% of your income, you can have an 80% income replacement by 54. And then if you wait until age 29 to start saving, you're still on track for early retirement. If you can save 25%, you'll be able to replace 80% of your income by the time that you get to age 58. So Brian, what would you say the takeaway is? Or would you say the big idea for someone in their 20s is that they should walk away from this with?
Yeah, is that put your money to work as soon as possible. Take advantage of the free money, take advantage of the savings opportunities, and building those good habits and behaviors financially, and your future self will be very happy with you.
And because what happens is, all right, so you've made it through your 20s, and now you're getting into your 30s. Now you're getting in the messy middle. And life is starting to happen, right? You're getting married and you're buying homes and you're having kids and all of these things are taking place. And one of the questions a lot of my peers find themselves asking is, okay, man, what do I do? What's next? Where do I go from here? And I don't think that we are the only people asking those questions.
Yeah, I do think having a plan is so important because in the 20s, you're just trying to figure it all out. 30s, you're starting to get career traction, but you have the chaos at the home front. Exactly what you said. You need a good plan. So we found something to look at.
Contributing up to your employer match in your 401k is definitely a very good thing. In my personal opinion, after you contribute up to the employer match, you should max out your Roth IRA next before contributing more to an employer 401k. The reason I would do the employer 401k in this case first is because that 3% that's being matched is pretty much free money. It's the closest thing to free money that you're going to get. After that, doing a Roth IRA gives you a good post-tax benefit, meaning any gain on your investment is not taxed.
I like it. He's going right through. It sounds very familiar.
$6,000, which is the maximum per year to the Roth IRA. I would continue contributing to your employer 401k up to the $20,500 limit.
I love it. I love it. He gave you sort of a litmus test.
I almost feel like, because you can tell his eyes are just, he's keyed in on something. He's keyed in on something, just laser focus. I almost feel like I'm holding it up for him. Like right now, he is looking at, if you just go to moneyguy.com/resources, you too can download the 9-step financial order of operations. And by the way, if you want to accelerate your success and go ahead and get there even quicker, go to learn.moneyguy.com, and we have a full in-depth course, because what basic financial literacy was talking about there was exactly what we cover in the food. Now, if I was tweaking this, he's actually, when he talked about do the Roth IRA and get that tax-free growth, that's step 5 of the financial order of operations. He left a little bit on the table there with your health savings account.
Right.
If you have access to that, make sure you're taking advantage of that. But without a doubt, have a plan for what every dollar in your army of dollar bills can do to maximize their potential. You will be rewarded in the long term.
So I'm excited that my 30-year-old peers or folks in their 30s are asking these questions, right? So let's check in and see how they are doing. Well, if we look at the average 401k balance, according to Fidelity and Vanguard, of someone in their 30s, it's just a touch under $60,000 a year. When you look at the savings rate, it's about 8.3% contribution rate to the 401k. Again, it's better than what it was in the 20s, but we still haven't quite gotten to that 20 to 25% savings rate. And if you're looking for a goal to hit by the end of this decade, by the time you get to 40, you should aim to have about 2.6 times your annual income saved in your portfolio by the time you get to age 40.
The key part, once again, people are hitting about a third on the savings rate. Now, look, you've said it. This doesn't include employer match. I'm going to give, assuming your household income's under $200,000, you can add the employer match portion to your savings rate, but still a long way from 25% of your income, which is the aspirational goal we want you to have. Because guess what? You do 25% savings rate, it just opens up for you. Look at this. When you are 30 years of age, if you're saving 25%, you keep at it, and Bo will give you all the assumption on this, you will have the opportunity at age 59 to do life however you want. And that's what we're doing with investing your army of dollar bills, creating flexibility and owning your time because you have that deferred gratification and discipline.
Yeah, remember, here are the assumptions we use. A 6% rate of return on your dollars, a 1.5% wage growth rate, and your goal is when you retire, you want to replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. So for a 30-year-old, if you can save 25%, you're going to have options and flexibility at 59. If you wait until 35, well, now you're back to normal retirement. You are able to replace 80% around age 64. And if you are a late starter, maybe you haven't gotten busy yet, there is still hope for you. There is still opportunity for you. If you can start at age 39, saving 25%, even with these incredibly conservative assumptions we have, you can still shoot for a retirement replacing 80% of your pre-retirement income at age 68. Now, I want to be clear because I didn't say this previously, but it's important here. This doesn't include pensions or Social Security or other sources of income. This is just your portfolio. So again, even if you are someone in your 30s and maybe you didn't do all the things in your 20s that you wish you would have done, it's okay because your dollars still have some juice in them, but you have to adjust the behavior to start getting them in your army of dollar bills to start working for you.
The big takeaway from me, have that plan. Because, in your 30s, you still have so much potential with every dollar that gets invested, but you just got to make sure you're doing it right. Don't squander that moment.
Okay, Brian. So we've talked about the 20s, the early stage. We've talked about sort of the messy middle. Now we get into the 40s, right? Now we get into sort of this next stage. As someone in their 40s who's conquered their 40s, what would you say? What would you suggest is here?
I do think the 40s is a crossroad moment because this is one, if you've lived your best life and actually started doing deferred gratification early where you pay yourself first, invest the money, maximize the opportunity, you gotta start feeling pretty good about things. But it also could be that time where if you've gone the wrong path, you might start to get scared. You might really start grasping for get rich quick or doing things wrong with too much risk or too little risk. There's a really weird balance if you're behind at this age.
I worry for folks in their 40s that if they don't have a plan in place, they're susceptible to voices out there that might be telling them something that's either half true or not true at all. We found a video that I think a lot of people, maybe who are behind, they want to blame it on this type of thought process.
A 401k or 403b, those are not plans. Those are IRS tax codes. You're investing in the market for your retirement. If the market goes up, you make money. When the market goes down, you lose money. So the average American is literally gambling with their retirement. When you don't have to gamble, you can put it in a retirement strategy where you won't lose anything at all. Why? Because it's not on the stock market.
Because it's not on the stock market. If you invest in the stock market, goes up, you make money. If it goes down, you lose money. So it's basically 50-50 whether you're going to make any money, is what he's saying.
I do think it's interesting. When you're younger, you can be really aggressive. That's why it's not uncommon. We always talk about index target retirement funds, but it's not uncommon you hear young people talk about total market indexes and so forth. But this is why we talk about diversification, is why you do need to have a balance as you get older. You want to diversify money. But to say that the stock market is straight up gambling, that's a bridge too far. And let me, once again, we always have to show up with the receipts. We have to show why we say what we say and the easiest way to go prove this is always, everybody thinks when I hear people talk about markets go up, markets go down, I get the thought of a roller coaster. And we talk about the cycle of market emotions. And we see this all the time where people will say, well, man, it seems like it's overpriced right now, and I don't want to ride this thing all the way down. And they think it goes from 0 to 100, back to 0, back to 100. That's just not the way the economy works. We are in this period of innovation and accelerating returns where the economy overall is growing. If you don't believe me, look at U.S. GDP growth. That's your economy, the economic engine of society by decade. 1960s to 2020. Guys, the factor of growth in 1960, it was 0.53 in trillions of dollars. So it was half a trillion.
Yep.
Here we are close to $21 trillion at the end of 2020. That is a multiple that's tremendous. We're talking about 40 times growth. So this up and down is not just a straight 0 to 100, 0 to 100. What it is, remember the analogy, the visual I try to give you guys to conquer this. You are throwing that yo-yo up and down, but the thing is, you're walking up a mountain. Right. So yes, the yo-yo is going up and down, but you're always walking up to higher and higher elevation. The big thing to understand is, maybe in the short term, if you are speculating, it is like gambling. If you're playing with all the latest, chasing the hot dot, chasing the trends, that is gambling. But if you are buying into this economy through index funds and diversified portfolios, holding it for the long term, it's a wealth creation machine.
Yeah, we know that the market is down about 2 years out of every decade. That means it's up about 8 out of every 10 years. So it's up more often than it is down historically. I don't know that I agree with the premise that it is exactly like gambling. So let's check in with our 40-year-olds. If you want to look at the average 401k balance by age, this is data according to Fidelity and Vanguard. For folks in their 40s, it's just a touch under $124,000. The average savings rate, contribution rate into a 401k for someone in their 40s is just under 9%, 8.9%. And remember, if you listen to our show, we tell you that by the time you get into your 40s, we really want you saving 25%. Yeah. We want you hitting that 25% savings number. And if you're doing that, and if you're saving at the rate that you should be saving, by the end of the 40-year-old decade, by the time you get to age 50, your goal should be to have about 4.8 times your annual income accumulated by age 50.
Now, look, this next slide, because we did it in the 20s, we did it in the 30s, where we showed, hey, if you're saving 25%, what will it create for you? But a lot of people were watching this in their 40s, be like, I guess I missed out on all that compounding growth. That is not actually true. Yes, you might be delaying when you can retire, but you still have the opportunity. We showed earlier that the life expectancy has gotten right under 80 years of age. So even if you're 40 years of age, just starting out at 25%, there's a good chance before you reach age 70, you can have financial independence. So the train has not left the station. Get to work.
Again, if you don't believe us, go to our website, go to moneyguy.com/resource. We have our wealth multiplier. It shows you just how powerful your dollars can be. And we always talk about, for a 20-year-old, $1 can turn into 88. But for a 40-year-old, did you know that $1 can still turn over 7 times by the time you get to age 65? So if you are this person in the 40s, and even if you ignore pensions and Social Security, and even if you assume really conservative assumptions like 1.5% wage growth or 6% annual rates of return, but if you save for 25% of your income, you're still looking at, okay, a 30-year roughly savings period before you can get to a point where you can replace 80% of your income. Your dollars still have juice in them, but this is the point where if you've put it off, you have got to get serious about it in this decade.
Yeah. But let's talk about the 50-somethings and beyond. I mean, this is the people you're not, it's not aspirational in the future. I'm retiring it someday. Now you're looking at the runway, trying to figure out how you land this airplane. And I still hate when I go out on social media, when we go out on TikTok, there's a lot of people throwing shade at this important wealth building tool of 401ks. And we found one that I think would help.
Sure.
Fact is, a 401k is a horrible investment. The average 401k balance for a 55-year-old in America is $135,777. Now, the 4% rule says you can comfortably take out up to 4% per year at retirement without worrying about running out of money. That's only about $5,400 for the year. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd need about $5,400 a month at retirement. Now, everybody's circumstances are different, but you also have to remember that $135,777 is also going to get taxed. Oh, and don't forget inflation. Oh, and don't forget it's attached to the market, so when the market goes down, so does your money. Tune in tonight to my live stream. I'm going to show you a secret of the wealthy. I'm going to show you how to stack away tax-free income and how to earn compound interest. You'll outpace inflation, and I'm going to show you how to guarantee you'll never lose. Drop a comment, let me know, and make sure you follow this account for more money tips.
Don't you think it probly has something tied into
do you see the little disclaimer
insurance products?
At the end
yeah.
of this?
Oh, is that? You have better eyes than me.
It says, asterisk, this is in white writing, very small. I am not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. Well, at least he put the disclaimer on there. It certainly sounds like he wants us to tune into his live stream to hear some secret strategy that he's going to tell us about that uses words like guarantee and never lose, and man, your 401k is a horrible investment. I just don't know that he has an accurate view.
All through this show, we have been sharing the American behavior of savings is well below. It's about a third of where it should be. So that's what, it doesn't surprise me to hear that the average retirement account balance is $130,000. That doesn't mean that this thing is trash. It just means the typical person has a really hard time in this consumer society we live in, deferring gratification, having the discipline to save for the future. That is a sad fact, but it doesn't mean that this vehicle is broken. So here's what I think is very important for the 50 and beyond crowd is you better have a plan. You better, this is the time, because I think a lot of you, if you're watching financial content, you're listening to $135,000 and be like, what a joke. Yeah. I mean, I'm 10 times that amount. But what I'm more nervous about is, what are the right decisions to make? Because this is when you're really trying to figure out, how do I pull this money out right? How do I lower the taxes in retirement? How do I stress test to make sure that I indeed do have enough money to retire? It doesn't have to be as dire as what he shared in this video.
And I think maybe things are even a little bit better than he suggested. If we check in, again, this is Fidelity and Vanguard data. According to them, the average 401k balance for someone in their 50s is a touch under $200,000. It's about $197,000. So it's better than the $135,000 that he quoted. But I'll agree with him. At a 4% withdrawal rate, that's not going to create a huge income for you. However, at a 4% withdrawal rate, plus maybe part-time income, plus maybe Social Security, maybe you have something there. But this is what I think is really, really exciting. If you're someone in your 50s and you have $200,000, it still has some juice in there. For a 50-year-old, every $1 can still turn over about 3 times by the time you get to age 65. So if you have $200,000 in there, it could still be a substantial sum by the time you get to retirement. So don't be discouraged. Recognize that you have soldiers in your army of dollar bills that are working for you. But here's what you do have to improve if you are in that situation. The average contribution rate for someone in their 50s into their 401k is about 10.4%. Your goal, if you are not nearing or at financial independence, is I need to get to 25%. I've got to learn how to master that deferred gratification so that I can get those dollars working for me. Because by the time I get to the end of this decade, by the time I get to age 60, and that's probably the point where retirement, I can now see the landing strip. Landing gear's coming down, and I'm now thinking about the next stage of life. Your goal should be to have about 8.1 times your annual income saved in your portfolio by age 60.
Yeah, now look, we get some of that data. Fidelity publishes that multiple every year. But I got to tell you, if you're 50 and beyond, that should scare you because that's just such an indiscriminate number that doesn't match your goals, doesn't know when you want to retire, how you spend, how your income comes in. This is why it really is important. Fine-tune that plan. We always talk about know when to go pro, when to go beyond the basics of what you can do yourself. And this is how we built our careers, that we love on you, give you all the free advice, but there will come a time, because it doesn't matter how simple you desire your life to be, success will create complexity, and we can help you navigate all those tough decisions that have to be made. That is the abundance cycle fulfilled. I know a lot of you are looking at this and you're saying, even if I'm in my 50s, I have this $200,000 average, but Bo has told me this thing's going to have a multiple by at least 3 when I retire. You're still on track for 7-figure and beyond with your savings and the increase, because you're going to do 25% and more on your investments. Make sure you know where your blind spots and you have a good co-pilot, because now you're on track to being the CEO of a 7-figure portfolio and company that will manage your retirement. Treat it with the respect and the good decision making that it requires to do it right.
If you want to know more, you can go check out our website, moneyguy.com. We have a resource page. We have a blog, FYI by FTE. If you want to check out some of our coursework, you can go to learn.moneyguy.com. And if you want to think about the abundance cycle and what we do in our day jobs, go check us out at aboundwealth.com.
Guys, we love creating this content. Go check out those sites that Bo talked about. Keep sending suggestions also on all the things that we can react with or topics that you want to know more about. Go to moneyguy.com, aboundwealth.com. We're going to keep creating content. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Money Guy team, out.